Job Hunting
101.
Providing you with the tools you need in your job search. Job Hunting
101. Thank you for tuning in to Successfully Answering Common Interview Questions as part of our Job Hunting 101 series. My name is Taryn Bearline, and I'm a business services recruiter at Tampa Bay WorkForce Alliance. I'm joined here today by Sherry, Joe, and Brian.
My name is Sherry Settle. I'm with Tempwise in Tampa. We are a staffing company who specializes in professional and administrative positions. We work with many wonderful organizations in the Tampa Bay area, and I'm proud to say that some of them have been included in the best places to work, not only in the city, but in the state.
Hello, my name is Brian Cabral. I work for Anastar Technology, a company of MySource Incorporated. I've been with them for a little over 7 years, and I'm a retired Navy guy who was a recruiter in the Navy, and I've been with that company since I retired in '05. MySource specializes in IT, and Anastar works with telecommunications.
My name is Joe Martinez. I work with Brian at MySource, Anastar division. And I was actually a field technician and brought on board to recruit the field technicians and get a down-to-earth view, per se, on the candidates that come through. I've been with them for almost 6 years now.
Awesome. So you've searched for available positions, sent off your resume to anybody and everybody, and you've finally gotten a bite for an interview. Today, I would like to discuss how to successfully answer those common interview questions. So let's get started. First things first, an employer calls you into their office to conduct the interview. You shake their hand, you sit down with your best interviewing smile, of course, and the employer says, "Tell me about yourself." It's an interview opener that nearly every employer uses to somewhat gauge the candidate, is it not?
Yes.
So let's start with pre-interview preparation. There's some certain things that you need to do before you even step foot in the employer's office to kind of get yourself ready to go. Maybe attire, grooming, something like that. So what's your best pre-interview advice?
When I set someone up for an interview, the first thing that I do is make sure that they have as much information about the company organization as possible, so that if the company were to ask them what they know, they're going to have an answer, and they're going to know what they do and what maybe a little bit of the history. Then it becomes that you're presenting yourself. So you want to make sure that your clothes are all clean, everything's pressed, your shoes are shined, you wear closed-toed shoes. If you're a lady, you want to make sure that you wear stockings, even though they're not in fashion. It's still proper business etiquette for dress. So you want to go in the best possible light, being dressed for the interview. For ladies and gentlemen, suits, the closed-toed shoes, the hose, as we talked about earlier, and nothing too revealing. Everything needs to be above board with looking professional. You want them looking at your work history and you, not at the clothes you're wearing. So that's very important. And also make sure that you go in there prepared to answer any question, role play with someone, so that you have some comfort and ease during the interview process. But just make sure that you're a shiny penny.
Good one.
Shiny pennies, a shiny dime. 10 minutes early is okay, 10 seconds late is not. What I prepare my people for is do a dry run to wherever, if you're not familiar with that location. And a dry run is just, the day before you take a ride out there so you know where it's at, where you're going to park, and so on. So you are there in enough time to where, you can relax yourself for that interview. So again, 10 minutes early is okay, 10 seconds late is not. So.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say as far as preparation is concerned, if you're researching the company, then you're researching the job that you're applying for, right, or applying to. I'm going to kind of go against the grain here a little bit as far as the attire. The attire, if you've done your research and you've seen, like for a technical position, for example, the guys are out there and they're wearing blue jeans and they're wearing their steel-toe boots and what have you. I have seen employers and managers who do the interview Shy away from the guy who's a little overdressed. And I hate to say that because I know what you're stressing for as far as professionalism. But if you present yourself in the best light that your means allows, pair of clean khakis, pressed, still pressed, polo shirt, clean, still pressed, the manager will make note of that. As far as some of the things that guys in the blue-collar workforce have a tendency of bringing to an interview is their tattoos, their earrings, their nose rings, all kinds of rings. Know what you can remove and get away with, right? Know what you medically have been asked not to remove because of whatever the reason. Tattoos, you're going to work alongside folks that have tattoos. Just cover them to the best of your ability. Let that not be part of your interview, okay? If the manager sees a tattoo crawling out the side of your neck and knows that you're doing your best effort to cover that up, it probably won't even come up in your interview if you're wearing the right attire. And I'd say that's a big part of it. Eliminate a lot of the variables that are going to come up in the interview that you haven't even started yet in your preparation. You guys agree?
I'll echo on that. You definitely want to be groomed and professional. For the past 8 years, we've been dealing with technicians, and to have them put on a suit, it's a little in left field with a hockey stick.
How you're dressed, like
okay.
shirt and tie.
Oh, absolutely.
You know.
Yep, but that's fine. Mm-hmm. But there's a sense to where. And I'm just dealing with the clients that we deal with. If a person comes in, and I've heard this from the managers, comes in with a suit and tie, 3-piece suit, looking fresh, he doesn't want to get that guy dirty. The type of work that these guys are doing that we recruit for. Now some of the IT positions that we also recruit for, we're going to prep them. So it just depends on that position that you're going in for.
Right, and the company.
Yeah, and the company.
And that's knowing the company and what their expectations are.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that's what we're getting at. It just depends. You know, for someone that's going to be a carpenter, and you're going in and you're going to be on site building houses. Well, you're not going to go there with holy jeans and flip flops and things of that nature. But you are going to look presentable. But they don't. You know, they really don't expect you to have a 3-piece suit on, and you're not a salesman or anything like that. But be clean, be professional, be groomed, and like Joe said about the tattoos and everything, you gotta make an effort on the tattoo. I don't want to touch too much on that. but you know, I've had some, and what I do with our company is if I'm sending a candidate in for an interview and it's in our local area, I'm going to have them come into my office first, and I'm going to prep them to get in for that interview. And everything that we discussed here is basically what I covered with him, and that's going to prepare him a little bit more. But for those that don't have that access to prepare for an interview the way that I do it, you can take a lot of information from what we talked about here today. So I'm just saying, like Joe said, and everybody, it just depends on the company. And if you need a shirt and tie and a little cologne, put it on. It works.
Absolutely. So now we know what we should wear. So now we're dressed. We have done our dry run, we're 10 minutes early, we're groomed, we're ready, and we're sitting in that chair waiting to be called back to the interviewer's office. And we get called back, and we're sitting there. And the first question they ask you, which is such a common question and trips a lot of candidates up, is, tell me about yourself. This can either positively or negatively set the entire tone for the whole interview. So how do we best go about answering that question to tell enough, but not too much?
Say practice. Practice that question as much as possible. There's no such thing as over-practicing that first question. It's hard, it's difficult. My advice to a candidate going in, again, possible blue-collar position, focus on your skill set, your positive attributes, what you bring to the table for this company, and then I would wrap up maybe with a moving forward with this company type of a statement, so that it's a smooth transition into that next question, and not leave anything open for discussion if you're talking about yourself. What do you guys think?
Yeah, preparation is key with this whole process. But prepping for that question, it's a hard question. It's some people can go too far. Some people will nail it. My suggestion is you don't go too far, and just be positive about yourself, but don't get into argumentative politics, things of that nature. Don't get into a lot of that. You just stay with yourself.
What would you consider going too far?
I got one.
Yeah.
Don't bring personal matters into your interview. Don't stress how you're a rock star, quote unquote, you know, and how you're not open to training. Don't give the impression that you're, you know, not open to be trained or take on the same responsibilities as your last job, so that there's no reason to train you. You have to be willing to be trained regardless of that length of time, you know, and that could be another question down the road in your interview, is the length of time it would take to get you trained, and be the most productive person that you can be for that potential employer.
If you have that rock star background, don't be afraid to let them know that you'll share that as well, because they can. There's positions there to where you can be a trainer. So, yeah.
And I think you have to be very careful, if you are the rock star, to not.
We're rock stars, man.
To not come across as being above everyone. I've seen coworkers become intimidated by people with, like, oh, a monkey could do this job. And all of a sudden the supervisor's calling us, letting the person go because they weren't a fit for their culture. So you want to be careful. You're not going to know everything. I don't care what you've done in the past. You're going into a new company with the way that they're working, and you have to adjust according to what their needs and wants and specifications are. So you have to go in there and be listening and taking notes, and go in there with the right attitude. You want to bring the right attitude, and not that I'm all that in a bag of chips.
That's a good point. I'm not sure. Just to kind of go on that a little bit, a lot of what we're hearing in today's needs, the potential employers are not necessarily focused on that highest amount of skill set. They're more focused nowadays on that person being a good fit for their culture within their environment, whatever that environment may be.
You can teach a skill, but you cannot teach a characteristic.
That's a good point.
So what we find is that we really do look very closely at the characteristics. And if we get a lot of things that are like negative, or things that are something we're not comfortable with, then we know that most likely the client's not going to be too. So we look for the positiveness, and we look for that the person's listening and not just talking.
It's important.
So happy people make happy employees again.
This is true. But how do we go from being a human, which is what you need to be, you know, in an interview, as opposed to necessarily not the rock star, but, you know, the human being who's humble, who might have, you know, all these awesome skills, but it still has room for growth, and not cross the line into talking too much about my home and my dog and my cat and my bird and, you know, that kind of stuff. How do we still remain human, you know, the balance between the two, human versus rock star?
I think it's okay to mention during some point during your interview that, you know, maybe your family is part of an answer. That's divulging that little bit of information, because you got to connect with that person that you're interviewing with. It's going to be very important, because he needs to try to determine whether or not you're a good fit for his company, but at the same time you have to determine whether or not they're a good fit for you. Otherwise, we're going to be replacing them after 3 to 6 months, and they're going to be asking for another candidate. So I think if you stress to the person you're interviewing with, even though your skill set is super high, you gotta have the willingness to be trained and follow the procedures and the protocols that company has been asked to follow.
I think answering the questions, period.
Mm-hmm.
Answer the questions. Don't go off on tangents and add extra information and all of a sudden you're on a completely different topic. So answer the question simply and then let them ask the next question. They are controlling the interview. It's very important that you allow them to do that.
So what is the time frame that you would recommend for answering this question, tell me about yourself? Because it seems like we could go on for 10 minutes about ourselves, but you know that's not necessarily what we want to do. You can do an hour.
Yeah, no.
So what is a good time frame? You know, do you want to go 5 minutes talking about yourself on a soapbox, or would you rather keep it, you know, a lot shorter, more succinct to the point?
I think it's, you know, the question really is more of an icebreaker because people have to have a starting point.
Yeah.
They have your resume in front of them. They just want to hear what you're going to say.
Awesome.
So you really don't need to give a whole lot of information, but just make sure what you give is prepared.
That's great.
Yep.
That's great advice.
And while you're talking to this interviewer, he or she, they may, you can see body language, and you can tell whether or not, okay, time for me to stop.
Absolutely.
And let them go on with their questions, because if you start boring them, that's not good.
That's absolutely great advice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of points within an interview that you can improv. That first question is not so much an improv question. You got to have the right answer, be able to talk about yourself in a relatively short amount of time, and still get the point across that this is something that you want to do.
So now the job seeker is nearing the end of the interview and the employer asks, do you have any questions for me? I'm sure we could all agree that the wrong answer to that question would be no. What are some good questions to have written down that you can present to the employer?
I've heard some funny ones. I've heard, do you pay parking? There should always be a question of some sort, even if it is, what is the turnover rate in your department? What do you think are some of the positive things that you have done to maintain that excellent low rate of turnover? Just little things like that. Anything that you can think of, and that's something, part of your research, that you'll already have come up with before you even step into that interview.
You got to ask something. So you know whatever it is, whatever information you might have gotten from your research on that particular company, you got to come up with a question. Never go out without showing some kind of interest in their company. So
I'd say if you're in an interview and if you've done your research, you were able to try to answer majority of the questions that are being asked of you. It's, I feel, a good idea to bring maybe a notepad with you and maybe write down some questions that you would ask yourself of this interview that may be answered throughout the interview. But if it doesn't get answered, you got to be willing to ask that question because it needs to be a good fit for you as a candidate at the end of the day, right? So would that question then be, what are your expectations of me as a potentially successful employee? You know, just to keep that positive flow going between the both of you.
Or even what would a typical day be?
Right, absolutely.
That's always a good question.
yeah.
What are some of the worst questions the job seeker can ask the employer?
Stressing compensation, always, you know, focusing too much in one area, money, for example, asking for days off during an interview. I have a vacation already scheduled in the future. It's all in presentation, obviously, but you know, it can lead to this interview's not quite over then. You know, maybe we have more to talk about.
You want to avoid things that look like they would be limiting to your role. For example, you don't want to ask, is it okay if I leave by 5 every day? I have to pick up my children.
Absolutely.
Those kind of things. You don't want to look like you're not going to be able to fulfill your role.
One question that I know always trips up a lot of job seekers is, why should I hire you? There's a lot of different ways you can take that question, a lot of different attributes you can kind of bring into it. What is your take on the best way to answer that question?
Personally, I think that you should really have an answer. and it should be truthful in who you are. What I might bring to the table might be totally different than what he could bring to the table, but that we could be equally qualified, we just bring something different. So if it were me, it would be that I have a positive attitude, I'm a happy person, happy people make happy employees. So that's me personally. If it was a position that wasn't really requiring so much the communication skills, but maybe more task-driven, like on the computer doing data entry, then that's not so important. So I think you just really have to be who you are, but always remain positive.
Just tell them what your goals are. Just tell them where you want to be in 5 to 10 years with that company, or in a position with that company. Give them answers like that.
Yeah, positive light. Keep yourself in a positive light. I think, you know, fall on your skill set, whatever that may be, whatever position you're interviewing for, your skill set's pretty important. Keeping up on technology, if that's relevant to the job that you're interviewing for. Your loyalty, you know, a lot of that will speak for itself in your resume. If you have a resume, that's probably a different show. You're really selling yourself during an interview, and to sell yourself, you got to know what you're talking about.
We always recommend that you role play with somebody.
Absolutely.
Because the more prepared you are, we actually, if you go on our website, we have frequently asked interview questions, so you can pull from that and just go over them and we will even help people and bring them in the office and evaluate them and just give them an idea as to what, okay, that wasn't a good thing to say, or that was great. So the more preparation, the better you are.
With the changing job market today and how some candidates tend to sometimes interview and apply for positions they may not have a ton of interest in, but they know they have the skill set to be successful in the position. So if that's the case and you're interviewing and your interviewer asks you what interests you about the job, and you're not so interested in the position, but you know you could do a great job and be very successful at it, how would you tackle that answer?
I'd say a good method of attack is to not assume you already have the position because you have the skill set. And help me out here, guys. I mean, we run across it all the time.
Well, I think that I would focus on the interest in the company and the fact that doing this position will help cut their teeth for the next position, and that it's a position that would be a position where they would learn a lot.
You know, another touchy subject to kind of touch on is when an employer asks you what was your biggest failure in your last position. Not a lot of people like to talk, and a lot of people don't like to admit their failures in a position, especially if that might be, you know, a reason of termination or, you know, something to that effect. How would you kind of tackle that little touchy question?
Be honest. Be honest about it. If something at a position really, and you know if it really upsets you or if you really are not positive in that light, don't bring that one up. Go to another one. Something that is a little less touchy, a little less touchy. But be honest about it, and know that that's also a good question that an employer would ask or an interviewer. So you can prepare for that question as well. They're going to ask about your previous work. Never fails. They want to know what got you sitting in front of me. There's a reason why you're sitting in front of me, especially if you're at a certain age. They want to know why.
Absolutely. That is all great advice. We are getting a little bit low on time right now. So do we have any last minute tips for answering common interview questions or just being successful in an interview in general?
Be professional, but be approachable. Don't sit and just be super nervous. I mean, they're human just like you are. They want to give you a job. They would not be interviewing you if they didn't want to give you a job or give you an opportunity. So it's you selling yourself. So you got to be relaxed and do it.
That's a good point. You're the last person I would love to interview and give you that position. I'd say, in addition to that, eliminate some of the variables that you have control over. Don't wear shorts and sneakers to an interview.
Or flip-flops.
You can point that out, but it still happens. It still happens to this day.
Yeah.
You can eliminate some of the variables by having a resume. If it's a more of a trade position and it's not something people commonly have a resume for, it's okay to have one. It outlines your work history. If you have a good work history, it outlines some of the job duties. The more you can answer the interviewer's questions within your paperwork, whatever that may be, resume, application, then it's going to go that much more smooth for you at the end of the day.
I think being prepared, from your preparation of researching the company to every little thing about you from head to toe, has to be right on point. And when you go in knowing that you are prepared, you look good, you feel good, and your answer and the whole thing's flowing, then you're putting all your cards on the table in the best possible light. So I think being prepared. Remember too, go with the ideal standard for interviewing. You hear a lot of mixed things. Okay, dress for the job. No, always go in a suit, even if you're going for a housekeeping position, because a suit is putting you in the best light possible. So preparation, preparation, preparation. And make sure you send a thank you note when you leave there. So get the person's information. Make sure their name is spelled correctly. Give the first and last name. But a thank you note gives the final touch.
Very important. Get a business card for that person. And like she said, you can email them or send a thank you or something to say, I appreciate your time today in the interview. And send that right away before the day is out. That goes over.
But don't burn your bridge by calling every 24 hours, every 8 hours following up.
Yeah.
No. Have patience and understand too that your time frame from when you hear back from them may not be their time frame.
Which is a good question at the end of your interview. When can I expect to hear
Right.
something? When would be a good time to follow up if I don't hear something?
And all those little nuances are what will help make an interview successful or, unfortunately, possibly unsuccessful. Well, that's all the time we have. We hope you found this information helpful. If you need any assistance claiming your weeks, writing your resume, or like more tips on interviewing skills, go to our website at www.workforcetampa.com and sign up for one of our employability skills training workshops. We'd like to thank Brian, Joe, and Sherry for being on our panel today to discuss interviewing. Thank you for joining us for the Successfully Answering Common Interviewing Questions portion of our Job Hunting 101 series.
The Tampa Bay WorkForce Alliance and WorkNet Pinellas offer workforce solutions designed to improve your business.
I've really valued my relationship with WorkNet Pinellas and have been instrumental in keeping us informed with new educational trends.
We've really seen our employees grow in their own personal development. It has not only exceeded Power Design's expectations, but our employees' expectations as well.
To learn more about our no-cost programs and services, visit workforcetampa.com or worknetpinellas.org.